Well, hello, everybody. This is BJ Murphy, publisher of Neuse.com, and thank you for joining us again on this special Facebook Live coronavirus chat here on our Neuse Facebook page. Thank you to Dr. Travis Towns in the background, helping to engineer this whole chat, as well as our VP of Operations, Aletha Thrower, who's helping to moderate some of the conversation and things that are happening. We got a great guest today, and I'm really excited about the conversation we're going to have because there's been a lot of rumors, a lot of questions. And we had a great chat yesterday with Dr. Pradeep. We had a lot of great feedback from that. So thank you so much for watching that yesterday. Thank you so much for watching the replay. We also posted on our our YouTube channel. And today we're going to have a conversation around the same topics, the coronavirus, COVID-19, and how it's impacting our state, our schools, our businesses, our unemployed. And it's just a really good chance for us to have a very transparent conversation with Senator Perry. So we'll bring him home in a minute. But first, if you don't mind, please share this broadcast with your friends so that they can make sure they're getting very accurate information. I have seen a tremendous amount of rumors. I've had people messaging me about some concerns they have with rumors that they're hearing from reliable sources. And look, I just want you to share this broadcast because we've got a source with us today. I want to make sure, give you a quick announcement. Today, we launched for the first time ever, something I've been wanting to do for a while, but today we decided to go ahead and launch our text alert system for breaking news. So if you want to sign up for the Neuse breaking news alert text system, then all you've got to do is use the keyword NN, just NN, and send that to 484848. So just text the word NN to 484848, and you'll get on our breaking news text message alert system. We've already had dozens of people sign up since we announced it today. So thank you so much for everybody who's already done that. We'll make that in the comments here. And please share that with people so they'll know. Because sometimes you don't want to wait to the next morning's newsletter. Sometimes you're not necessarily in a spot to get on Facebook, but you get a quick little text message, see the headline, and click the link if you want to look at the story then or not. So thank you everybody who's already signed up, but please make sure that you do that. Text NN to 484848. Quick update from yesterday. We now have 297 confirmed cases of the coronavirus COVID-19 in North Carolina. That's actually up from 184 since Saturday. We have 0 deaths reported as of this morning in our state, and we have 0 cases reported in Lenoir, Greene, and Jones County. In some other news related to the coronavirus updates, Waylon Adams and Jan Parson announced today that the 2020 Barbecue Fest on the Neuse is canceled. I know that was not an easy decision, something they agonized for the last couple of weeks, typically the first weekend in May. And so trying to determine when the best time to make the decision. And they announced today that the Barbecue Fest on the Neuse for 2020 is canceled. Also, UNC Lenoir just released a statement talking about their inpatient visitors are not permitted anymore. There are a few exceptions, so go to the Neuse.com article about this and read what some of those exceptions are. But the one thing that I really want to point out in that article, and they stress, in fact, I've seen this stressed across the UNC health system already, is that they're in desperate need of medical supplies, from masks to nasal swabs, you name it. Please make sure if you've got some of those medical supplies, please make sure you reach out to UNC Lenoir and help get it to them. Also, and as I kind of talk about getting into our guest here, a couple other things. American Red Cross, I think we just confirmed it, but somebody let everything is still good. Please register for their blood drives. They've got 2 blood drives this week on Wednesday and on Friday. So please register for their blood drives. Go to Neuse.com and click on just go to search and click on blood drive, or actually if you go to neuse.news/CV, or if you're on our main page and you see that coronavirus tag or image at the top, just click on that. Scroll down a few articles, you'll see something about American Red Cross or blood drives. Click on that. You can register because they don't want people just walk up to give blood tomorrow and Friday. So please, please, please pre-register for that. Join our Facebook group. We report Neuse.com. A lot of neighbors helping neighbors there. We've had well over 100 people join just this week trying to get answers to some of these questions. In fact, if you just want to help Neuse News in some way, you can chip in. We're not selling, but we're basically giving away T-shirts. If you want to chip in $5 or $50, it doesn't matter. So we've got some people who have ordered for their entire family, just for themselves. We've had from $8 on up to $100. Just want to say thank you. Everybody's already helped with that. Just go to neusenews.com/t-shirt, neusenews.com/t-shirt, and we'll have those printed in a couple weeks. For a state level, I want to make sure that you know that the NC 211 is alive and well. I'm getting text on that from that system myself. All you got to do is text the word COVID-NC, COVID-NC, to 898-211. That is COVID-NC to 898-211 to get some updated information from our state government. And speaking of state government, the governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, just had an announcement today. We're going to bring on State Senator Jim Perry to kind of talk about that. So with us here today is our state senator from Lenoir and Wayne County, Senator Jim Perry. Thank you so much for taking time to be with us here today, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So the governor today had been glad to see, a regular occurrence of these press conferences. They had to modify, just like we've had to here. This is the first time you've ever joined us virtually, because you've been in the studio several times. But he did announce today that the K through 12 public schools will have no in-class instruction until May 15th. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that it was appropriate to have a standard response for our state. I know that a lot of parents have mixed emotions about that announcement, but I'm glad that he informed us about what the wait would be and what the situation would be. Dealing with that unknown has been very difficult for a lot of people, and at least now we have some certainty and have the ability to do some planning.
And part of that, he also lowered the threshold from 100 to 50 people, something that was a conversation over the weekend, whether that was going to happen or not. And but that in effect, that actually closes gyms, movie theaters, sweepstakes. For the most part, I've seen at least one here locally voluntarily closed out of just being cautious. But tell us a little bit about still open, allowed to be open.
So if you look at this most recent order, which was Executive Order 120, and what it covered, it was more of what they're going to consider to be non-essential services, more entertainment, some things that they feel can be put off from a health standpoint for the state. And it's difficult for a business owner to have someone think of their business that feeds their family as a non-essential service. But and I know a lot of thought went into those decisions, and they struggled. What they're trying to give people comfort around having open is going to be our supply chain for groceries. They want to make sure that you're going to be able to get gas when you need it. Hardware stores, something happens in your home, your plumbing breaks, people having the ability to fix those things. Electricity. A lot of thought and conversation really goes into these decisions. And I know it feels very unfair, to the people in my community when someone has to close and someone doesn't. And I think the truth is that we're living in an unprecedented time, and these are unprecedented events. And there's no perfect solution to this imperfect situation we're in. So I was glad to see additional steps to try to curb some of the gathering that we've seen. But I'm also thankful to see some efforts toward continued balance to keep money moving in our economy and to help where we can.
I do understand that is very difficult for people to really kind of grasp what is essential and non-essential when it comes to their livelihood. And that's probably where some of the emotional conversation, as well as hey, this is my livelihood you're talking about, it puts food on my table. That's a very tough conversation. And I certainly expect that small businesses across this country, and of course here in our own community, are struggling with that as well. I know that hair and nail salons, barbershops, massage therapists are expected or being ordered to close by 5 p.m. on Wednesday. And so I'm sure some people are getting putting a rush on some of their services here the next couple of days. I feel like it might be another month or so, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna start wearing a hat every day. I'm gonna start looking like Tom Hanks. What was that movie? I forgot. I mean, somebody's gonna drop a note in here. But more seriously, so let's talk a little bit about something that is impacting people. I heard the governor earlier today say that well over 100,000 people have already applied for unemployment assistance. Tell us about that and what that means to the system and what that means to individuals.
Yeah, so I think if we looked at January through February and took the first week of this month, there have been about 33,000 applications for unemployment. And in the last 7 days or so, we've seen about 113,000 employment applications. So, it's a sign of where we are and what's going on in the economy. It's scary, for a lot of people. The governor also in his last executive order, and I forget which number it was, or maybe it was the first one, but he put into place something that the General Assembly passed in 2017 that eliminated the waiting period for unemployment benefits. So if you have been impacted by COVID-19 and your employer's laid you off, or you've been sick as a result of that, you should go apply. Don't be embarrassed. That's why the help is here. You should go apply for those benefits. The best way to do it's going to be online, because they've got an amazing amount of volume. And I think that, again, we have to remember that we're living in very difficult time. There's an amazing amount of volume in there. 3 times in 1 week the number of applications they've had in over 2 months. So they are hiring additional people to help with that and help with the throughput. I'm frequently asked about, should we expand the length of time that unemployment is there? Should we expand the dollar amount? And I'll say that, this is our first week in here, and looking at the volume that we have and looking at the growth, we need some more time to determine how many people are going to go on there, what's going to happen. I also get a lot of questions about unemployment because our 1099, they're contract workers. And I'm asked about the fairness that, they can't apply for unemployment, but unemployment is an insurance that is paid for by the employer. So that's, that determines who's eligible. If someone has paid in to this pool of money, this insurance pool for you have some eligibility. And if they have not, then you didn't pay in, and that's a difficult thing to tell someone, but it is how it works. I think we've got about 3.8 billion in the UI fund currently, and I'm glad it's built back up. Some of you remember the last financial calamity that we had during the Great Recession, and I think it went backwards by about $1 billion at that time. So I'm thankful we have the reserves. It doesn't fix everything. It's not supposed to, but I'm glad that there is some help there as opposed to none.
And when it comes to small businesses, because that's what you're hearing, from small business owners as well. What can they expect in terms of help from the state of North Carolina? Because I want to talk about the federal government in a second, but when it comes to the state, I'm kind of curious what is on the policy side. What could happen there for?
Yeah. So, and this is something that a lot of people aren't really aware, but state and local governments operate on cash, unlike the federal government, meaning we have to have it in the account. We can't create funds. So when we start thinking about funding functions of government and what kind of special assistance may be there for small businesses, we need to think about the numbers, and the number of small businesses in North Carolina. We have about 913,000 small businesses. So, and that's the most recent number I had. I think it's through the end of 2018. we have $1.2 billion that we've built back up in the rainy day fund after hurricane related issues. And we've got a couple of billion in reserves, in reserves that are unreserved, meaning they're not committed for something else. They're unrestricted. So let's say, and I'm using hypothetical numbers, that the state appropriated $2 billion just to help small businesses. I mean, it sounds like really amazing amount of money until you divide it by those 913,000 small businesses, and then you would end up with about $1,300 per business, and we
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to put additional funding in any of the critical areas of government that we know we're going to need for health, safety, and welfare of our citizens. So I don't just say that to scare anyone or to try to make anyone unhappy, but I do believe in plain spoken communication, and this type of event is unprecedented. It is impossible that the state would have the resources to fix everything. I think it's reasonable to think that we're all going to have a certain level of um, uncomfortable experience with this. There's going to be some pain. There will be some businesses that have a difficult time making it. Some will not make it, like any recession you go through or any difficult time. But there are programs in place to help at the federal level. I think the state will focus on where the state can help the most, and that's why it's so important. And I've really been paying attention to the federal packages. Uh,
Yeah,
because they're
I
going
want to
to
talk
have to be
about that.
substantial. Sure.
Yeah, because I mean, you just mentioned $2 billion, and that's a lot of money to me, and a lot of money to you and to people watching. But when you put it
Right.
into terms of the whole state, certainly Neuse could use an extra $1,300. But the truth is, it would just help limp us along. It's not going to do anything
Right.
significant to our operation. And when it comes to the federal government, I heard last weekend they were talking about a $1 trillion deal, and then today I'm hearing it might be 2 trillion. Tell us what's going on in DC, and how does that impact the kind of decisions that you're making at the state level?
So, one thing I learned when we went through disaster relief for farmers, and that package was put together, is that because we acted before the federal government did, there was a lot of pushback and conversations about that counting as income to the farms, or they would offset what we did. It's important to know where the feds are going to help, because we want to use our resources as efficiently as possible. And they are the ones with really unlimited funds because they can create money. um, that is where we're going to have to seek the majority of relief for our economy. That is going to be where you're going to see the big packages. Like you, I've read about the billion. I've read about the 2 billion, maybe even more. But that's why I'm paying so close attention at the federal level, and that's why I'm also so frustrated. Some will say it's politics as normal, and I'm not going to cast any blame anywhere. But I'll say what I'd like to see is a very simple bill related to this incident and relief for our citizens. Because every day we delay is another day that a family or a small business, or anyone in your community, think about any of your relatives or friends, it's another day that they are going to suffer. And that's why we need some
Right.
leadership at the federal level to focus on the problem at hand.
And how does the government mentioned earlier today about the similarity between the like FEMA declared disasters that we've been used to, Florence, Matthew, you name it, and a situation like this. How do those two systems? How does a natural disaster parallel to this? What is a health and economic disaster?
Well, I think what we're talking about is getting your economy back moving. Focusing on the health and welfare of the citizens. This is going to be a little different because you know what the end is in a natural disaster. So
Hmm.
we have a hurricane. we knew when it was over, right? We started building. We sort of knew what the needs were when the bills were drafted. There's a lot of forward thinking that has to take place as they're working on legislation now to anticipate some of the areas. And I can promise you one thing about whatever legislation that comes out, regardless of the body, and that is that it will not be perfect. You know, these are individuals
Hmm.
up there doing the best they can, and we will have additional steps, but it's not going to come immediately. You know, this isn't going to show up next week, but we need to get it here as quickly as possible. There, in my opinion, and it is simplistic, and I don't know everything, but we're really talking about the societal needs of two big areas. One is health,
Hmm.
and the other is our economy. And having all of one and none of the other, regardless of which one it is, that does not work for society, right? In order for society to function, we need certain elements and certain amounts of both of those things. So that's why you see the focus on the economic impact. That's why some of the decisions at the federal and the state level aren't as simple as we would like for them to be. You know, I read comments about, oh, we should do this or we should do that. Um, it's really there are shades of gray in some of it because you know, if we were to do nothing on the health side, we would have untold amount of death and financial impact. If we don't keep in mind the economic impact and the economic side of the equation, you have the same thing. You know, if you go back in history
Hmm.
and look at great recessions and financial calamity, and look at the impact on public health and death rates, they're through the roof. So I can appreciate the difficult position that our leaders who are focusing on this issue are in.
And I was glad to hear Dr. Mandy Cohen in the governor's press conference this afternoon talk about mental health, because that is going to be a real issue going forward as people aren't working, people are stuck at the homes. I mean, I'm trying to think about how to get my kids outside, play with a dog, jump on the trampoline, going around the block. They're not interacting. We're social beings by nature. They're not interacting with their friends, and so there's a lot, and that's just in our own household. And I'm curious to see how the mental health continues to evolve and become more prominent in this conversation. I really want to talk a little bit about, I know you've posted over the last few days that you've had a lot of rumors, something we talked about when I first jumped on this chat here. There's been a lot of rumors circulating. You want to go through three or four of the top rumors you've heard and how you've addressed them on your Facebook channel?
Sure, and thanks for bringing that up. I know that's caused a lot of unease in a lot of people. I think the first one is there is a standard text message that has gone around and message that has been sent around on email that mentions that Homeland Security is going to take control of the National Guard and we're going to have a federally mandated shutdown. And you know, if you start picking through that email or that text message, you pick up on a few things that, if you look at it closely, you'll know that is written by someone who didn't know what they were talking about. They said that this was put in place because the president invoked the Stafford Act, and the Stafford Act has to do with natural disasters or disaster relief and states of emergency, and it gives FEMA the ability to help. It gives broad powers to the federal government to assist the states. It's not about federalizing our state level National Guard, which I think is a Title 10 issue. Our National Guard reports to our governor. The Pentagon has released statements on this issue saying, "Hey, that's false." There's also certain limitations on the National Guard. If you do federalize the force, it cannot be used as police services in your local states and your local communities. We have seen last week it was at least 27 states that had activated their National Guard. But that was to help with medical issues, to maybe help with hospitals. Some of their MPs were activated to help with different things. This isn't about some big government shutdown. And I was glad to see all the press releases. In fact, it was such a big deal that they set up a couple of different websites at the federal level, I think through FEMA, and through the White House, just to dispel myths, because I was glad to see that dispelled.
In fact, we actually have a question from Bobby Cox. Thank you for the question, Bobby. He asked Senator Perry, is there any hope for a vaccine anytime soon?
So, I'm not a physician, but I'll tell you from what we've been told and what we've read, that typically the timeline on something like that is going to be rushed at 18 months, right? So there are treatments that I've read about. They're trying non-traditional treatments or drugs, and they are accelerating a lot of what, typically we go through clinical trials and blind trials, all these things to test the drugs, and then you really want the trial to last for a long time, so you know what the side effects are.
Right.
We've all read, or you've seen on the news that a lot of these things are being accelerated and waived in some instances where they feel it's appropriate to do so. I want to mention that, as I've read or said in on briefings, I want to remind everyone, and it's not to minimize this, because this is very serious, right? That's why we're going through all this. But we need to avoid hysteria on this. Remember, about 80% of people who come in contact and have this virus, infected with this virus, about 80% of them have very minor symptoms that manifest. So this isn't something that you go pump gas and you're dead, the next day. That's not what we're looking at. And I think if we use some reasonable care and common sense, we're going to be just fine.
There was another question a while ago, and it dealt with about the elderly and their welfare checks. Do you see that system changing anytime soon with all the changes in DC and the state of North Carolina?
Is the question related to whether or not they'll continue to receive them, or what's the?
Yes, it just says basically what plans are in place.
So absent any announcement of change, and that's a question that we get at the state level too. And people say, well, what about this or what about that? And they were referring to the executive order. Absent an announcement of change, I would expect the status quo on anything of that nature. Something as big of a topic as a welfare check or Social Security or things of that nature, there would certainly be huge announcements and press releases and notifications. So if we haven't seen something of that nature, I think we're safe to expect the status quo.
And lastly, Senator, before we start wrapping things up, what would you like to ask the public to do? Because there's questions about what can we do? What can I do as a citizen? I'm home. I'm stuck at the home. I don't know what I want to do, and I really want to help. I asked this with Dr. Pradeep yesterday. What are some advice besides things like try to help the hospital get some medical supplies? What are some things you want the public to do while they're at home?
Yeah, so I would say there's always, I don't care what the law is, I don't care what the directive is, right? There's always a certain percentage of the population that ignores it, regardless of what it is. But I would say the best thing that you can do is to be as fully in compliance with the executive order as possible. Try to keep in mind that the reason those guidelines are out there. I've been having we're all human. I'm having the same struggles with my family. We're going a little stir crazy at times. It's a big departure in what we're used to. We've talked about things like just the few of us, like not getting a big group together, but a few of us grabbing a trash bag and going pick up trash beside the road, because we know
right.
that we've got some areas that could use things or little projects like that together. And that's because I don't think we can clean our garage another time. I think we've cleaned it as many times as we can, over the last week.
You can come over to my house. I'll social distance myself for you to do that.
Very thoughtful, very, very thoughtful of you. I know, I think thinking of little things in your community like that you might be able to do during this downtime. Spend some time with your family. We all spend so much time connected, and working these days, since we have those phones on our hip, I think just being together is a good thing, and I do believe that's good for our community. But anything like picking up trash or helping in your area like that, and I know that doesn't sound great, but that is something you do your family, and you do see an immediate difference, and it helps. If you do have any specialized medical skills, I think reaching out to your local hospital or touching base with someone could be very helpful. Remember, while a lot of things in the economy aren't doing great right now, and where a lot of restaurant workers are being encouraged to go apply at grocery stores, with the knowledge that when this is over, they go back to their employment at restaurant. That was to keep the restaurant owners from being worried about their employees being stolen. But grocery store sales are doubling, what they would typically be right now, and they're going to need help making sure everything's stocked and put out as they get it, so that we can maintain as much normalcy as possible. But I also think it's important to acknowledge that our lives have changed, right? This is a
Hmm.
historic event that our children, we're certainly living through it, but our children are living through it, and their children are going to read about this in history books one day. So I believe we need to be mentally prepared to accept the idea that we're going to have a certain level of discomfort, and that's unavoidable. But we're going to
Hmm.
be okay.
Well, and how can people get a hold of your office if they want to connect with you with social media or an email or something like that?
So, I do have a Facebook page where I'm as active as I can be, and I share a great deal of information that I get from state government on that Facebook page as a means of communication. If you have a specific need or question of me, it's best to email me at my legislative email address. That is jim.perry @ncleg, that's North Carolina Legislature, so ncleg.net. Because if you post it up there, there's a chance I'll miss it. We do want a record of it so that I know that I've gotten back to you, or my legislative assistant has been able to get back to you.
Hmm.
So the email is more helpful for direct questions. But otherwise, as soon as I get information, I post it so that people can be informed, so they can share with others. I think the psychology of waiting tells us that uninformed waits feel very unfair. They feel much longer, than the time period you're actually in. So, these are the people of our community, and I want to share information with them as fast as I can. I'm a real person. I know how it feels. I know how my family feels. So I want to try to alleviate some of the concern from not getting information.
Well, thank you, Senator Perry. Is there any last thing you want to mention before we jump off?
No, I'd say please be mindful of spreading false information. People
Right.
tend to jump on something that's negative, and if it's negative and wrong, it travels at the speed of light, I think. So it's reasonable to ask questions, but let's try everyone take a deep breath and do the right things during this time, and just help each other where we can.
All right. Thank you so much, Senator. Really appreciate you jumping on today.
Thank you for
And
having me.
for everybody else, yes, sir. Thank you. And for everybody else, I want to make sure there were some announcements I made at the very beginning of this broadcast. I want to make sure I mention them to you again because they're very, very important. One is that the American Red Cross has 2 blood drives in our backyard this week. On Wednesday at the North County Cooperative Extension Office, and on Friday at church. Go to newsnews.com. You click on the coronavirus image at the top. And when you find the American Red Cross store, you'll see the link where you can actually pre-register. You need to register before you go. Today, Neuse created a breaking news text messaging alert system. All you've got to do is send the keyword NN for Neuse, just NN to the number 484848. So just text NN to 484848, and you'll be a part text messaging alert, a breaking news alert system. And so really happy that we're able to finally unveil that and get you out the information as timely as we can. Please join our We Report Neuse News Facebook group, because that group has got a lot of neighbors helping neighbors. There's only so much Neuse News or even Senator Perry or others can realistically get back in touch with you. It's a great way for neighbors to help neighbors, but certainly want to make sure that you're getting your news from reliable sources like Neuse News, like the governor's office, et cetera. So please make sure you're doing that. If you want to chip in to help Neuse News during this time, we're actually printing a limited edition hashtag Neuse Crew t-shirts. If you go to our website, you click on the menu button, you'll see a t-shirt. You'll see what they're going to look like. They look really good. And you just chip in. We're not selling them. Just however much you want to give is awesome. And we'll make sure we get those out over the next couple of weeks. So I really appreciate everybody doing that. If you haven't already, subscribe to our Neuse newsletter. It's free. Basically, it's an email of all the day's top headlines in your inbox at 7 a.m. So as you're grabbing that cup of coffee, having that biscuit or that bacon and eggs, you can look over the news on your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, and get caught up with all the day's news. So we really appreciate those who are doing that. And also, don't forget about texting the keyword COVID-NC to 898-211. That is the NC State of North Carolina's 211 service for you as well. So please, before you hang up, share this broadcast with your feed so other people can see it. And be sure to tag Senator Perry and just say, hey, look, thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate it in your comments here. Y'all have a great day. Tomorrow, we are going to have at 4 p.m., we're going to have the Lenore County Director of the Health Department Director, Pamela Brown, is going to be on with me. There's been a lot of questions about the health, what's happening in Lenore County. Have we been testing people? Is anybody positive? All those kind of things. What can you do? Looking forward to having a very honest conversation with Pamela Brown tomorrow at 4 p.m. right here on our Facebook Live coronavirus chat. So that's it. Thank y'all so much for joining. Really appreciate Dr. Travis Town and Aletha Thrower to help them make sure all this goes well. And y'all have a great afternoon. Wash your hands.